Hey everyone, so today I thought I would chat a little bit about the differences between school and university. I thought this would be like a good topic to talk about because when you're doing like A-levels or IB or whatever you're doing at school, I feel like you don't know what to expect if you're then heading off to university. So I know a lot of you guys will probably just be starting university now, you'll be freshers, or you might be in year 12 or year 13 and kind of like thinking more about university. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about it because I know before I went to uni I had no idea what to expect, and kind of your only expectations are from your experience at school, if that makes sense. And university can be so different to school that I just wanted to like mention some of the differences, maybe help you guys out a little bit. I know there's a couple of things that I just wish I was told before I went to university. So yeah, I thought I would just chat about them a little bit. Also, I just wanted to say a quick disclaimer before I start going through the different things. This is obviously all my experience of school and university, and I'm sure it probably differs between different schools and different universities and different courses. So take all of these things with a pinch of salt. It may not be the exact situation at your uni. This is just my experience with it all. So the first thing I wanted to talk about in this video, and kind of like the main thing that I wish I'd known before going to university, is the difference between how grading works at school compared to university. So I was actually watching one of Eve Bennett's vlogs a while ago now. I love her channel and I love her videos, and she's just started at Oxford. But she made a comment in one of her vlogs a while ago, something along the lines of like, oh, watch me do the worst I've ever done now that I'm going to university, or like something along those lines. And that comment is actually what triggered me to make this video, because I almost wanted to like comment on her video and be like, yes, like university will be the worst you've ever done, and like in a completely like non-horrible way. Like I didn't want to say that in a nasty way, but the difference between grades at university compared to school is just crazy different, and you can't compare the two. So if you're going in with the mindset like, oh, I got 95 on my A-levels, and you go to university kind of expecting to get a 95 on your coursework, that's just not going to be the case. And I feel like people should know that before they go to university, because it would save a lot of kind of disappointment and shock when you get your first piece of work back. So the way things are graded in England, and I'm pretty sure this is consistent across the country, if you get 70 or above, you've got a first. If you get 60 or above, it's a 2-1. If you get 50 or above, it's a 2-2. And if you get 40 or above, it is a pass. So that kind of gives you a rough idea of how different the grades are from school and university. Because I know a lot of people, if they'd got a 70 while they were at school, they would probably like be disappointed with that, maybe if they were aiming for like something really high. And they go to university and like 70 is like the best you can do pretty much. So it's definitely a big difference, and I feel like you should go in knowing that, because I remember I got my first piece of coursework back in first year and I got like a 65 or something I think on it, and I was just a little bit like shocked and taken aback, being like, oh, I've only got 65 on this piece of coursework, whereas 65 is actually a really decent mark, and I would be so happy with a 65 in second and third year. But it was just the fact that I didn't really know, like I didn't know what a 65 meant. So I definitely think go into university knowing the grading system, and don't be disappointed with any of the grades you get. University for one is obviously a lot harder to get good grades than school, at least in my opinion. So even if you're getting like a 2-2 or a third, like that's still good and you can still work on that. Like don't be disappointed with your grades, because it's such a different system that like just let yourself get into the swing of things before you start like criticizing how you're doing, I would say. Another big difference between school and university, at least in my course, is the way that you're taught. So at school I had, you know, classes of 20-30 people, we had a teacher, we were taught a subject, that was it. University, you obviously have lectures. I think my lectures had 400 people maybe in, and I had lots of different lecturers depending on what module I was doing. We also had like tutorials, which were smaller groups. In final year we had seminars, and I feel like seminars are most like similar to how school is, if that makes sense. They're kind of smaller groups, more group work, more chatting. Obviously like lectures, you're listening to a lecture, you're not really involved in it whatsoever, whereas, you know, at school you're expected to be like with it and listening, and you could be picked on. But lectures aren't really like that so much. I do know that there are some lecturers that will pick on people during lectures, which I just think is crazy, and I'm so glad I didn't have any of those in my whole time at university. Also alongside that, because there are so many people in lectures, you are not held accountable for being there, at least at my university. You know, they're not going to do a register of 400 people. It's up to you to make the decision if you want to go to that lecture, if you want to get that education that you're paying so much money for. So I think that is definitely a big difference. You know, like if you're in school and you're late or you don't turn up to a lesson, like you get in trouble, whereas university, obviously you're so much more independent. You have the freedom to choose if you want to go and learn. And I just think that's definitely a very different experience for learning, because usually the people you're around, you know, people have chosen to do this course, so everyone's kind of interested in the subject to some degree, everyone wants to be there to some degree, and I just think that gives like a very different dynamic to the people and the environment that you're working in, if that makes any sense. Also, that goes along with having more independent study. You're kind of spoon-fed a little bit at school, and although obviously that spoon feeding gets less and less as you go up through school, the difference between like A-level and university is still quite a big jump in terms of like independent study. You are expected to do just a lot of stuff by yourself at uni. You have to make the time to go do like your extra reading and do your essays and all that sort of thing. Like no one's going to force you to do anything, which I think is really good for some people, and some people will absolutely thrive in that sort of environment and they will love getting up to go to the library and doing their independent reading. Other people will obviously struggle with it more because they're used to having someone tell them what to do, and it can be quite tricky to adjust and to get into the swing of things and like force yourself to do this independent work, because no one is literally telling you to do anything and you can just get on with whatever you want. Another big difference between school and university is to do with like interaction with teachers and staff. So I personally didn't have much interaction with any of my lecturers while I was at university, or any of like my seminar leaders or anything like that. That was entirely like my choice. I could have had more interaction with them if I wanted to, but it's nice that you have the choice, that you're not forced to interact with people, because I'm not really an interaction kind of person. So that's obviously very different to school, where your teachers are like on at you, like your teachers know you, they chat to you, you have a fairly good like connection with them, at least at my school. And that is just very different to university, because they're lecturers of 400 people. They don't really have the opportunity to get to know every single person like a teacher would. So I do think it's like a different relationship that you would have with lecturers and members of staff at university. That's not to say that you don't interact with them or you can't interact with them, because you definitely can. Most staff have like office hours and you go speak to them, and if you're struggling with something or you don't understand something, you can go chat to them after the lecture or go to their office. So definitely don't like stress, and if you want to chat to someone and chat to a member of staff, definitely do it, because obviously it will be so helpful. But it also means at university you have the choice not to. You're not kind of like forced to interact with them. You will most likely also have a tutor at university which you can talk to about like either education stuff, or if you're having like issues at home, or you know, anything you can chat to your tutor about. So there are staff that you can talk to. Don't feel like you have to like isolate yourself if you want to talk to people, but there's definitely a big difference between the relationship you have between teachers and the relationship that you have between lecturers. Another thing that I found at university, and I think that this probably does depend on your course, but I didn't have very much formative work. So basically formative work is stuff that doesn't really count, and summative work is stuff that like counts towards your final grade. So majority of my work was summative, which I loved, because a big pet peeve of mine at school was homework, and like pointless homework that they're just giving you because they have to give you a piece of homework, and you drawing this picture of like a brain isn't going to be that helpful, but you have to do it because you've been told to do it by a teacher. So I loved that about university. Like even if I did get set formative work, it's usually work that's actually going to benefit you, and it's not just pointless. They're not going to give you work for the sake of giving you work. They're only going to give you stuff that like is actually helpful, and it will help you in your exams or your coursework or just your understanding in general. So I love that about university. Like pointless homework is just the worst, and getting rid of that at university and having things that actually count towards things was definitely like, it motivated me to work a lot harder, because I wasn't wasting my energy doing stuff that I didn't care about. It does also mean though that it can put more pressure on the work, because I feel like if you have lots of little bits of homework throughout the year, like no one really cares that much. But when you're kind of doing one big essay every month or something like that that counts towards your grade, it definitely puts a lot more pressure on that piece of work. But I think that's also a good thing, because you have more time that you can spend on individual essays and stuff like that as well. The final difference that I've got written down is just in terms of like balancing life while you're at university compared to when you're at school. It's like obviously a very different situation, especially if you've moved away from home and you're living in halls, or like living with strangers and you're making friends and all that sort of thing. At school, you pretty much have like your home life and you have your work, and if you're lucky, the majority of people will go home and their parents will have cooked them dinner, and you know, they don't have to deal with too many other outside stresses really while you're at school. Whereas you go to university and all of a sudden, you know, you're in charge of cooking yourself dinner, you have to do the washing, you have to make sure everything's clean, you also have to be like making new friends and socializing and trying to get that aspect of university as well. And you just have to like learn to balance a lot more things, I think, while you're at uni compared to while you're at school. And I think that can be quite a shock to some people, because like obviously you know it's going to be different, but I think you don't know what to expect until you experience it. And I think trying to balance those different things can be a little bit tricky, especially at the beginning, like while you're trying to get into the swing of things. So I think that does end up being quite a big difference between school and university, because you're still having to do all the work, but you've got a lot of other things going on at the same time as well. So they have been all of the differences between school and university that I've wrote down. I'm sure I have forgotten a lot of things. If any of you guys have finished university and you can think of something like a main difference between school and university, definitely leave that in a comment down below. I hope this video has been helpful to some of you guys if you've just started university and you kind of, maybe you haven't had your first piece of coursework yet and all that sort of thing. I hope you're loving university. I hope it's going well. Let me know if you are in your first year, where you are and what you're studying, because I'm super nosy. And if you're in year 12 and year 13, I hope this kind of helps you prepare a little bit. I'm not sure. If you guys have any video requests you want to see from me, definitely leave them in a comment down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.